Good morning, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you are chiming in on today, or when you just so happen to be breezing by this replay. I want to welcome you to NPN, the Minority Psychology Network's um, event today, presenting on seasonal affective disorder. Seasonal defective disorder. First and foremost, before we get into anything, we want to say happy 5 year anniversary to the Minority Psychology Network. We are celebrating 5 years of being in service, servicing communities in disparity, dealing with actually giving resources and connecting to mental health resources in your area, bringing just like events today and workshops on different areas of mental health, mental wellness, um, bringing, giving, just removing the stigma, just basically removing the stigma centered around um, mental health, especially in our minority areas. Um, I want to say thank you guys for chiming in, for taking your time out on your Saturday. You could be doing anything else, but you chose to chime in and check us out on today. I will not belabor you long. I just want to get into this topic today: seasonal affective disorder. There are so many of you who are preparing for the holiday, right? And you are starting to feel overwhelmed. You're starting to have these emotional episodes that you can't really explain. You can't really put your finger on it. And you're trying to figure out, why am I feeling like this? Well, there is a thing that we sometimes experience that is called seasonal affective disorder. And four of the topics that we will be talking about today is seasonal affective disorder, symptomatology, and prevalence rates, as well as treatment. I do have a special guest with me today that will be chiming in to answer any of your questions that you may have. Her name is Dr. Chandra Smallwood. She's been with NPN. She's one of our in-house experts, so she'll be chiming in to answer any questions that you may have. And you can also, at any point of this presentation, feel free to use the chats. Feel free to utilize the chats if you have any questions that's not posted in our presentation. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to use our chats and we will get those questions answered to you. If we don't get a chance to answer them today during our presentation, we will respond back in the chat. So we won't leave you without having some answer to your question. All right. Seasonal affective disorder is a type of major depression with a seasonal pattern that tends to begin during the autumn and or winter months, and then it remits um, during our spring and summer months. Now, um, during these seasons, and sometimes it can start to you can kind of feel it kind of creeping in just before the season necessarily change into autumn. Just sometimes, just when you start to experience all of the different decorations and just different signs that the season is about to change, even the weather, you start to sometimes feel a way. There's just something that happens in your emotions, right? The prevalence rates is, according to Psychology Today, 10 million Americans are affected by SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. Excuse me. Annually, more specifically, women 4 times are as likely to experience SAD than men. Additionally, the age of onset is 18 to 30 years of age. Lastly, those who experience SAD are more likely to report family members has had a mental health condition. That's interesting, right? A lot of times we think, well, it's just me, but sometimes it's actually within your bloodline. Sometimes it's something that has been reoccurring within your family, that some part of mental illness that hasn't been talked about, that hasn't been discussed. Um, systematically, I'm sorry, Sematology. Sematology is some form of depression. There's hyperphagia. Excuse me, I'm stumbling over words. Hyperphagia, weight gain, poor sleep. There's poor regulation of serotonin that leads to mood imbalance. There's overproduction of melatonin that produced in dark places, which induces sleepiness. Oh my God, like that experience happened to me quite often. And I didn't realize that that's what was happening to me. And I had to change my light bulbs. I had to brighten my room up intentionally. The combination of poor regulation of serotonin and excessive amounts of melatonin can disrupt one's circadian rhythm. What's your biological clock? How your biological clock is supposed to operate within 24 hours. And common symptoms may include social anxiety disorder, agoraphobia, or alcohol abuse disorder. You see yourself on this list. If you see or have experienced any of these things on this list, you are in the right place. You are in the right room. Some treatments to handle those things that we just listed is light therapy. I just talked about, changing the light bulbs, adding some brighter lights to your room, or colorful lights, adding colorful lights that actually speak to your mood, that help uplift your mood. Meditation is such a wonderful it's a wonderful treatment, whether it is dealing with sad, whether it is dealing with just anxiety. Meditation is a way to just simply slow everything down. It helps you get regrounded, help you to come back to your center. And then there's cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also really, really a really good treatment to utilize, and that's speaking with a therapist and talking over what's happening with you and getting some tips and technique from them. Um, I know we just moved through that very, very quickly. Is there anybody that have any questions that you would like to ask? Please feel free to add them to the chat. I would like to now bring our resident expert and give her an opportunity to actually introduce herself and tell you a little bit about what she does, and then we will get into these questions. Dr. Chandra Smallwood.
Hi, thank you, Tandra. So my name is Dr. Chandra Smallwood. I'm a clinical psychiatric pharmacist and an anxiety coach. And seasonal depression is something that happens in the winter. It can even happen in the summer, but it's just not as common from different changes in our mood. It has nothing to do with anyone having any kind of weakness or anything someone should be what I want to say, like disappointed about. Like it's just something that happens and we can't just snap out of it very quickly. So we really need to take the time to do the treatment.
You're gonna use these items to make power.
I'm glad that you stated that, Dr. Smallwood, because a lot of times we really don't realize that seasonal could also be related to just the chain of things that has happened in your life. It may have been something traumatic that happened during a certain time of the year, and and that depression comes around, and really paying attention to the calendar, but it just happens in a cycle every single time around this particular time period. You find yourself, battling with, depression or mood swings, or your eating habits have changed. Dr. Smallwood, glad to have you back.
Thank you. Yeah, so people that already are dealing with depression or who deal with it often, because people that have depression, they can have it for various amounts of time, weeks, months, years. They tend to be more susceptible to a seasonal affective depression, such as SAD, seasonal affective disorder, especially with the change in serotonin, because people that are already dealing with depression already have decreased serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain. So the decrease in the light or the length of the days makes that even a stronger decrease for them. And then they also have the increase in the melatonin, which makes them feel fatigued and tired and lethargic. They don't want to, it increases them not wanting to do anything, not wanting to go anywhere, which kind of together just makes it a bit worse for that season. And then when it comes to the holidays, we all have, then it brings the pressure of family and buying gifts and,
Oh my God, yes.
are you cooking the right food? Are you inviting the right people? Like there's a lot of pressure in the holiday seasons for us, especially as Americans. So it all kind of adds up.
Absolutely. I agree. Because you know what? A lot of times when you have those family gatherings, they want to know who cooking grandmama's dressing, who got her recipe. And it's like, I already know before I get there that I'm going to have to deal with auntie them acting funny because I want to make the dressing and they don't feel I make it right. So you have that pressure, you have that pressure of that and that family coming together and that anxiety. So yeah.
Definitely.
So Dr. Smallwood, who's at risk? Can we talk about who's at risk?
People at risk are farther from the equator. They tend to have less light most times of the year, such as we talk about like here in the United States, we know that people in Seattle get more depressed because it's darker there all the time. And like places, Canada, they have more seasonal depression than we do. So it's just people that spend more time in darker months for the most part. I mean, everyone is at risk. Like you mentioned earlier, it tends to affect women more than men. But we also know from history that men aren't as likely to report a mental health disorder or when they're feeling a certain way.
Right.
Women are. We're more verbal about those things. So it's in some places that says that it's equal, and other places it says that women deal with it more. And usually, it's not something that usually happens before our 20s. The average age is about 23. So it starts to happen more in our adult years.
That is quite interesting. That's quite interesting. You would think that, everybody would be affected, in some shape, form, or fashion, even before that age bracket. But actually waiting until we get into that actual adult age that we actually start to really be affected by it is quite interesting in how our human behavior is, growing up and the things that we encounter in our lives that, wow, I don't really experience this, until I'm in my adult age.
Well, it's still has to do with reporting too, because I mean,
Okay.
teenagers, children, like now there's higher rates of depression, like anxiety in kids, like
Right.
as young as 8 years old are starting to go see therapists. Because now, I mean, especially with the pandemic, like we kind of know more about mental health. So it's hard to say that, teenagers are probably just not really realizing that this is happening and they're not really saying anything, especially when they're so hormonal.
Yeah.
It's hard to like say, hey, are you sadder in December than you are in July? Like they don't really see it that way. So
I'm
no.
glad that you said that though, because now, now that means that we need to actually pay more attention, to our kids and what's happening, with them as well, that we can actually acknowledge if they are starting to go into depression and how we can better help them navigate through that. Because, you're right, they really could be experiencing it, but it's just not reported because they got so much going on in their emotions already.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to kids and teens, I think that their parents really paying attention is really what helps them get through those times. We all felt certain ways during high school and things like that. And the people that had a lot of, support from their parents compared to the people that didn't, I think
Mhm.
as we aged, we've seen or felt that difference.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree. What are the triggers?
Well, for the most part, the trigger is the shorter days, the less light. I mean, like seasonal depression it starts at a certain point and it ends, right? It starts like
Mhm.
late fall, early winter, and usually ends spring, summer. So it's really, really triggered by that light. Because especially the people that already have the depression, it starts changing their hormones. Like I said, with the melatonin and everything like that, they tend to get triggered more. So it's really,
Got you.
in definition wise, it's really just the light for the most part.
Got you. So then in that retrospect, then so those who tend to like experience or live in areas where daylight saving times fluctuate and or where they stay within certain seasons, without a change,
Yeah.
are going to be affected differently.
Yeah. They have higher rates generally across the board than what we would have, like, or if you live in like Arizona or something like that, like it's just less basically due to the sun, which is, really interesting. And also, I mean, because we all know that vitamin D is made in the sun. When you have a deficiency of vitamin D, it really affects your health in general, but it also affects your mood because the deficiency in vitamin D can also bring on depression. So I mean, that's just a big deal for everyone anyway, and wherever you
Mm-hmm.
are, especially if you're somewhere that has a lot of sun, but you don't really go outside.
Okay. Okay. So when I look out my window and I'm seeing um I'm seeing the leaves start to change, or or the trees are becoming more bare. So that could be a trigger for me, or colors going in different places and seeing different colors. Could that be a trigger?
Colors like of the leaves changing. Well, it's more like say if you're at work all day, from 8 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
you may have 1 hour of sun after work. And say you
Okay.
don't have any windows at your job, then you're stuck in a building all day. There's maybe 1 hour as you're, commuting back home, doing things like that. You're not really, getting a lot of light, and then you're in the house. As opposed in the summer, it gets dark around 8, 9. So you may like in the summer, I'll go jogging
Mm-hmm.
in the afternoon or in the evening. But I'm not gonna go in the winter because it's dark. So it's like people have to change their lives
Got you. Yeah.
depending on that.
Got you. Yeah. 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 That's good stuff. That's good stuff. So is family a factor in seasonal depression?
Well, family is a factor in everything, right? Especially when it comes to like kids and teenagers, because a lot of times if your parents or one of your parents deal with depression, they tend to show it. You see
Okay.
them sad, you see them sleeping all day, you see them, not eating or isolating themselves or not going out with friends. Like you see them doing that. So
Mm-hmm.
family is a factor in that way because we as humans, we just kind of tend to feed off of each other, and you feel other people's energies and things like that. And then also, there's also the genetic component of mental health that goes through, generations. But I feel like that with education, like that decreases as time goes on. So, learning about things like seasonal affective disorder as like a mom will allow me to, hey, let me think about how I'm feeling around this time so I can do something about it before like my kids notice, things like that.
Okay. So that actually can become part of their programming then, huh? They see that you are experiencing seasonal depression and they're watching how your mood change and how things affect you, that when they get older, they kind of adapt to that same kind of behavior or way of thinking.
Well, like they see, like if you say, I don't know, you're struggling financially and you get a
Mhm.
bill for something that you didn't expect, and lay on the bed and you cry for an hour, and they see that. They see this is how my parent is dealing with life. So this must be how I should deal with life. I
Gotcha.
should, or that could come to a lot with anxiety too. Like if you see your parents stressed all the time, then it makes you feel stressed all the time because you feel like this is your example of how to deal with life. A lot of the time,
Mhm.
'cause these are the people that you spend the most time with. So they kind of
Mhm.
rubs off, and you're like, oh, well, instead of thinking, hey, I should just, push through, work harder, things like that, you think, oh my gosh, let me be stressed about it, or be sad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like leading by example.
That makes sense. So that also explains too why some adults, when they get into their adulthood, that these things come up, and sometimes not even aware that they're experiencing it to that extreme because of the fact that it has been so,
Yeah.
intertwined. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
a lot of us, we don't realize, until like one day, or you're like, why have I been feeling like this for years? And sometimes, you take a deep dive back and look at the triggers from the past, and it's like, I remember, I remember my mom being sad all the time, and
Mhm.
now I'm sad all the time. So, you can kind of relate those. And then we have to make a change, right?
Yes, yes, that was leading me right into, my next question. What are some ways that we can treat seasonal depression?
Well, first, since it would like definition wise, like what's in like the DSM, we need more light for the most part.
Mhm.
So when we start feeling that way, like feeling sad during those months, we need to open up the windows instead of keeping them closed. In the morning, maybe step outside, take a walk if time permits. There's even specific light boxes that are made that you can keep in your home. So things like that first, making sure that we're eating correctly. There's a lot of when people get
Mhm.
seasonal depression, they tend to, want empty carbs, candies, cakes, things like that, breads. Like we need to get complex carbohydrates, like eat the right things, make sure we're getting all the vitamins and minerals that we need. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times when we are depressed, we're not taking care of ourselves the way we need to.
Absolutely.
And then all that is exacerbated.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, and
Um,
then when it gets, if it continues to, happen, get worse, there are medications that help with that. And a lot of antidepressant medications, such as mentioned earlier, like the SSRIs, like the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, a lot of people have heard of like Prozac or
mhm.
Zoloft. These are things that people can take temporarily just to get through a certain amount of time. If you need to have help during the winter months, then it's not a problem to see, someone, psychiatrist, or even your primary care physician and say, hey, I'm really struggling right now. I may need something to help me get through. And it's something that, you know, someone doesn't need to be on for their whole life, just for to get through a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, as well as therapy. I mean, we should go to therapy maybe anyway, but especially during those
Yes.
hard times, cognitive
Yes.
behavioral therapy and medication together help
Mm-hmm.
enormously with things like depression, because a lot of time people with depression have their factors that they deal with like at home or in their
Mm-hmm.
work or in daily life, which the therapist is for, but then they also have chemical imbalances that the medications help them with. But with, you know, doing the right work and paying attention and, you know, doing the right self-care and stuff like that, they can get to a point where they're okay and they can, you know, back off on those treatments or those therapies.
That is so, so very important. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because, you know, especially in our minority communities, is like anytime that we start talking about speaking up about what's happening in our emotions or what's happening in our thought process that's leading up to certain behaviors and our actions, we tend to shy away from wanting to go and talk to a doctor or wanting to go speak to a psychiatrist or wanting to even talk with a therapist because of that fear, that stigma behind, I'm going to be put on medication. And this is now, once I take this, I'm going to be on this medication for the rest of my life, as if I'm bound to this, but not looking at this can be a very temporary thing. It's just to help you get through. It's to help you navigate through this particular season, through this particular
Right.
time. It doesn't mean that, oh, this is going to be, this medication is going to be your lifelong best friend now, but it's just to get you through. And then talking, just speaking up and having conversations to talk about what is happening, what's going on within your thought process, what's happening within your emotions. The body is changing because of what you are feeling and what you're experiencing. What does that look like? And then how do I get better? How do I get better? I just want to get
Yeah.
better. So
That's kind of
um,
why organizations such as NPN are really important, because when it comes to Black and Brown people, like, we like to kind of stick with our own when it comes to healthcare and the medical profession, because of, you know, things we've in the past, or we don't have as much trust, or, you know, we live
mhm.
a certain way, we have a certain life that, you know, with, like, we all know, like what you talk about when you're talking about who's baking what for Christmas or whatever. Like, we understand what that means. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we definitely want someone to speak to that understands, or that has been through that, or knows what it's like. And like, that's a unique pressure to Black and Brown folks, you know, like. And so, you know, when it comes to like the medications and the therapy, like, we really need to put out there different types of practitioners that can relate and that have used these things or these treatments and can give their experiences to say, hey, like, you know, this person over here doesn't just trying to like give me drugs just because. So I mean,
Right.
I hear that at times from patients. So I think it's important to continue to give education, you know, Black and Brown people to other Black and Brown people.
Absolutely. And hey, y'all, times have changed. It is not like it used to be in the mental health arena. There has been so much new information out there, so many new treatments, and so many new ways of actually navigating through whatever mental illness disorder that you may be experiencing. So you don't have to You don't have to isolate yourself. You don't have to struggle with these emotional changes that are overwhelming and overbearing and that are preventing you from living your best life. You want to see your best self. We want to see your best self too. And the way to do that is actually getting the help that you need. And Dr. Smallwood, you can attest to that as well, that that now we're able to actually match up with those who would be able to help us in the way that we desire it, right?
It's still not as well, like when it comes to Black and brown practitioners, it's still not as prevalent, but it's getting
Mm-hmm.
there. It's getting there, and there's a lot more education out there, such as what's happening here and such as what Successful is doing that really make a difference. So, I mean, it's still more of we kind of have to search it out, but
Yeah.
it's there a lot more, and we need to, also talk about things that aren't medication, because everyone doesn't feel comfortable taking medications and things like that, which is also
Yes.
fine. But in order to get through something like sad or depression, like we have to put in the work consistently, doing something, journaling, affirmations, doing a lot of self-care, things like that. Like there's a different path for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we do need help to find what path is right for us.
Absolutely. And that's why we have MPN. MPN is one of those organizations that actually help connect you with the type of resources that you need that actually fits what you're looking for. If you're looking for alternatives to medication, connecting with your resources like MPN, and there are other organizations that actually have resources that has been researched out, that we can also verify that these are actually good hands that you're being put into, and not just handing you over to someone that is going to put you in a worse state than what you're already in. So definitely connect with organizations like MPN that has resources, because there are changes out there, but because there's not enough information going out, you have to go to who has information, who has updated information to give you on, what's in your area. And a lot of times organizations do have connecting organizations in other areas. Maybe you're not in that particular area and you're looking for a network or an organization that you can connect with that's, maybe in another state or another city. Connecting with organizations like MPN will be able to connect you with those kind of resources as well. Um, Dr. Chandra, what are or actually how can we learn more about seasonal depression?
Well, if a person doesn't already have like medical people that help them, such as like a therapist or a psychiatrist, there's a lot of information out there. The National Institute of Mental Health has a wide variety of education to give. I mean, now I could say YouTube. YouTube has a little bit of everything for everyone. So if you're feeling some way, I'm sure there's a video out there. You know, asking someone that you know in the medical field is also good. There's lots, John Hopkins, so many places, but now online is full of everything. But I would say after all of that, don't diagnose yourself still. Like you may say, hey, this sounds like me, but at that point, you still need to, speak to someone and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. What are your thoughts? Do you think it could be this or that? Because we can't really diagnose ourselves with things. It's just not a good idea. Just in case.
Right, because we don't want to misdiagnose ourselves and then give ourselves the wrong treatment. Then we'll be putting ourselves in a worse condition than what we're already in. So definitely important for us to make sure that we're not self-diagnosing and that we're getting the proper diagnosis for what's happening with us. Which actually, what is the difference between um the the treatment for clinical depression and seasonal depression?
They really are very similar. Like the core treatments are very much the same.
Mhm.
Because one of the major neurotransmitters that we deal with is serotonin being low, and seasonal depression and like a major depressive disorder. So when it comes like the medications, they're mostly the same. It's a lot of talking, things out and dealing with what we're going through at the time. Um, I have a question from Gerald Jackson.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it. Okay. Mentioning light therapy being a form treatment during the seasons, would you say all the Christmas decorations to be a form of light therapy when trying to manage seasonal affective disorder? One of the things that when I think about like the lights on Christmas, it brings me back to childhood. It brings me back to like a very happy place. So I think when it comes to like technically light therapy, um, is kind of recreating kind of like a daylight. So unless you
Mm.
have really like jam-packed that house with like Christmas lights, it may not be the same, but when it comes to like how you may feel or what it triggers, I think those lights trigger a lot of happiness for a lot of us. And that things like that matter. It's kind of like when you go outside and you see like a flower, you're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And these things make me happy. Like that stuff makes us happy. But yeah, Gerald, you're like really jam-packing that house with lights. And I think that if you do that could help for sure. Um, and it says regarding kids during the holidays, when family is such a huge tradition, how can we talk to our children concerning them becoming sad about not getting the same treatment they see on TV or even hearing from their friends that their family is going to be doing? Well, when it comes to talking to kids about seasonal depression or any kind of mental health, like we really have to make a safe space for them,
Mhm.
as well as think about what we're showing them, in the way that we're reacting to certain situations. But we want to say, hey, like, if you're upset, like you're having a sad day, maybe open up to your kids and open up those lines of communication and say, mommy, mommy's sad today. And because of that, I feel like I just need to take a step outside into the sun. Like, do you want to come with me? We need to share in like the self-care with them. We're doing things that make us feel happy. Let's do things, let's take them with us, or
Mhm.
even doing some holiday traditions together and just going through like feel like you may feel a certain way, but there's ways that we can help our kids, such as putting together like a gingerbread house and just focusing on them for at least that hour, of a day. So I think that there's a lot we can do. And then when it comes to we need to manage their expectations about presents and gifts and things like that. Like if we start off the tradition of when they're younger, buying them like 20 toys, and then as they get older, or the times when you can't, you know, you you've kind of already got them thinking that way. Like we may have to like have those early conversations with, hey, you get gifts for Christmas, but Christmas is about these other things. It's about family and religion and all, and being with the people that you love. So I think that
Mhm.
if they've gotten presents all the time for years and years and years, you're gonna have to have some really strong conversations.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's true. With my kids, my kids are now grown and gone now, so I don't have to have the same kind of um Christmas experience as I used to have, which is interesting because what with me being without my children being children and them being adults, what they do for Christmas is now different. When they were younger, we would take Christmas time to create baskets. We would go and go to the dollar store and buy all kind of little gifts and create baskets to give away to the nursing home or to
That's
children to
awesome.
the children's hospital for kids who are having to actually stay during the holiday in the hospital. And we would go and feed the homeless on Christmas Day as well as Thanksgiving. And I would tell them, okay, so this is the idea. If you be so kind and you take your Christmas and you love on those who are less fortunate or who may not be, in a place where it's cheery and bright and full of love and joy. If you be these little joy givers during the holiday, I promise you that I will make it absolutely wonderful for you in January. So you'll get to have Christmas during December and you'll have Christmas in January as well. And so they would look forward to creating those baskets, and it took away from them expecting gifts necessarily for Christmas. But the places that we would go to that we were actually giving, helping to serve, they were receiving gifts there anyway. So it wasn't like they were actually just not getting anything. They just wasn't getting it in the traditional sense of from Santa Claus. Although my kids didn't grow up with the Santa Claus idea, they knew that mommy and daddy bought gifts. But I also didn't take the joy of Santa Claus from them. I didn't take the experience that comes with Christmas for kids. I didn't grow up with decorating Christmas trees. That wasn't something that was done in my household, but I didn't take away the experience from them so that they can actually enjoy that and have all of those wonderful things that come with that for children. But I gave them a different perspective on Christmas. So when January came, you know, they didn't necessarily, okay, mom, where's my gift? Now when January came, they just knew that some kind of way mom was going to make it magical for them. And when they got it, they were always grateful. So that helped me with how I look at Christmas, how I chose to celebrate not just Christmas but also the holidays, because we didn't grow up with traditions. We didn't grow up with, traditional kind of family gatherings and things like that. So I created my own. Now, my kids didn't keep that tradition when they grew up and got their own families. They do something altogether different with their children, but definitely sometimes even with your own self-care, you have to be intentional with what you're doing in your own self-care and basically kind of filtering your children into that self-care that you're doing for yourself, and it'll shape how they look at and how they view the holiday season.
Yeah, definitely. Just even showing them a bit of attention sometimes is really all that matters. And turn off the TV. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Um, so there's a question, Anaya Hall. Is it common for people with seasonal affective disorder to have other comorbidities? Yeah, it's common. Because it's like depression, anxiety are like close cousins, and then seasonal affective disorder is definitely like that sad uncle. So sometimes people are like they said, they already have low serotonin. They may already have some hormonal things going on. So it will be usually more common for them.
Before we forget to do this, will you please put the Minority Psychology Network's website in the chat for those who are actually here in the room present with us now and who may be coming past and viewing this this as a replay? We want to make sure that we give you our resource to be able to connect with us at MPN to get more information. Also, oh my gosh, by all means, do us a favor and like and subscribe. Set your notifications on so that whenever MPN is on, whenever we upload new information, that you will be in the first to know of what's happening, staying on top of our events that we're doing. We want to build a relationship with you to give you a place where you can feel secure and comfortable, to come in sometimes and have a chat about mental wellness, mental health, mental disorders, how to get treatment, how to connect, and just simply just to say, hey, I need to do a check-in somewhere where I can feel safe and secure. So please, by all means, like, subscribe, and share. Share this YouTube clip with others. Before we go, are there any other questions? I don't want to leave anybody out. If there are any other questions that's out there in the room so that we can answer your questions before we go. And then did you have anything else that you would like to share, Dr. Smallwood?
I did, I wish everyone a happy holiday season. If you have any questions about anything else, especially when it comes to anxiety, I'm on Instagram under Dr. Chandra Lynn. I also have a YouTube where I talk about mental health mostly. My focus is women and mothers. Yeah, I really enjoyed being here. Thank you, Tandra.
Thank you so much for coming and spending this hour with us on today. And if you guys come by this video and you have a question about something that is not under this particular title, please feel free to give us your topic that you would like to see us discuss, and we'll build an event around it so that we can have a discussion, whether it's by panel, whether it's just a chat and chew, or maybe a in-person event. Please feel free. There's no dumb question. There is no dumb question. You may have that one question that millions of others have been wanting to ask but was just afraid to put it into words. So please feel free to put in the chat any question or topic that you would like to actually discuss, or questions that you may have long after this is over, and we'll promise that we will get back to you. All right? Thank you guys so much for chiming in. Again, please like, comment, share, and by all means, subscribe so that you can keep up to date on what's happening with MPN. Once again, MPN, happy 5-year anniversary. You are doing some amazing things out in the community. We love you, we appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you on our next event. Bye for now. Happy holidays.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.